Okay, my friends, I am going to show you something that is going to be impossible to deny. Everybody wants to find extraterrestrial life. Well, what is extraterrestrial life? It means stuff that is not terrestrial, means not is bound to this Earth. So where did it come from? Outer space. That's where extraterrestrial things are. Now, what is extra? They're talking about a new way. They're going to search for gases that are produced by life. Well, you don't have to go too far to do that. The space station already did that. Alright, it smells like seared steak, hot metal, welding fumes. It smells like seared steak. That is the metals that are right here, basically in the transition metal region of the periodic table. These are the things that are in blood. These are literally the things that are in blood, and they are vaporized in space because of the blood being literally cooked off of the comets and meteorites as they approach the sun. That's not dust blowing off. That is biological gases, and that's what they're looking for now. This is their whole new approach to finding it, is looking for these gases. Alright, I told you about cooking gases cooking off, and it's because of the biological fluids. It's not cooking off just anywhere. It's cooking off where there was their fluids. This is an artery. That, I'm going to tell you right now, is an artery, and it is gigantic. I think it's about 160 feet across. This is huge. This is Comet 67P. This is, I believe it's an ankle, but I can't be positive of that. And I don't know what kind of creature it's from. But I can tell you what, it's some form of a tendon enthesis. And there's tendons running up, I will show you, in a muscle bundle, which usually does run off from tendons so that they can sort of pull here and there. Now, this is the anchor ball. These little flippers up here, these little swish of gases coming out, and all of them pointing in every different direction they want to point to. They're not just blowing off of here. If they were just blowing off, they'd all be going in one direction. No, they go the way they want because they're being cooked. And they're being swished and blown out of there as the cooking goes. Again, little tiny ones servicing little tiny blood vessels. This got to service the whole foot, or whatever it is. I don't know. But again, I don't know what it is. But I can tell you what, that is an artery, and these are the blood vessels. And that's some form of a tendon. Now, there's no gassing off going on here, but here's what you do see. These, and we're going to get a little closer, these are the little tendon straps. This round circle with these little pinchy bundles, I believe, is a muscle strap that's broken off. All of this little dusty stuff is blood vessels and the fluidy, gooey sort of stuff that dried out and eroded down here. Now, this is like this is hard stuff. This doesn't boil off. Before in those gas pictures, all that was boiling out was from where the blood vessels are. And you have to have blood vessels coming up to service all these tissues that are up here. Now, broken right off up here is where the meat would have started. This is tough. This is tendon. This was meat here, and it broke right off. So there was a little bit of tendon coming up to this one, and that's where it broke off here. There's tendon coming up to this one, and it broke off here. What this was, I don't know. But it's absolutely biological, and the chemistry proves it as well. Now, by the way, I followed this from day one, every single day, and they were very wide open, everything. They landed, what they called it, the Philae lander. This was the European Space Agency. I think it was 2014 that they landed. They actually landed on here. And they picked up some samples and actually did spectral analysis on them, and they came out to be biology. They said it's biology. We just can't explain it, but that's what it is. Almost every time you see these big balls in space, whatever they are, I don't care what you call them. They call them asteroids. I call them tendon anchors. This is from NASA. All right, so and that's what they show, and you can see them everywhere. All the moons have them. Remember I showed you that big, huge blast coming out? That's coming out of here. This, you see these little balls here? those balls, they call them dragon balls. Well, what do you think they're doing there? What do you think they're doing there? I can tell you what they're doing there. They are blood vessels. They're little tiny entries for that blood to enter in to service that tissue that it's in. This is 40 meters. 1, 2, 3, at least. Right? That's like 360 feet, 400 feet across. That's what was shooting out that huge thing. This is a gigantic body part. And these were gigantic creatures. I cannot account for it. They're in space. They're on Earth. They're on Mars. And Venus is about to give birth, I believe. You see the size of that comet? That's 67P. This is Raleigh, North Carolina. That's how big it would be. Now don't forget, this is the anchor. And all of these little dimples are there so that the flesh grows into that so it can't be pulled out. That's an anchor. Then you get your tendon, and then you get up into your flesh, and I don't know whether that was a bone or not, but that's biology. And well, here's a spectral analysis. You see this? These are the chemicals that are in you. Exactly the same things that are in you. You got iron, and they're showing the different ferrous oxides of iron, which means we have iron O2 and O3 variety. It has O2 oxygen, O3 is extra oxygen. They're showing this. They're showing sodium, silicon, carbon, hydrocarbons. You're actually saturated with these same hydrocarbons. And they said it looks just like biology, and then they walked away from it. Here's Comet Oumuamua. This is a finger. I've shown this in extreme detail. These are all the little spots in the bone where the tendons attach. You see here? All these little tiny bone spots here? That's where the tendons attach. Make you go like this. This right here is at the very end of the tip of the finger, and all the little tendon straps lock into these balls, into these holes, just like this right here. This is exactly what it is right there. This is from one of my mud fossils, a giant finger. And that's exactly what it is right there. And all these little balls, just like that, lock into all these holes. And that is what runs this down, and then they lock into this. This is your joint right in your finger, the joint. It has the same thing on the other side as these holes right here, just like that. And it goes this way. It comes down to here. This is where the vein is, because it's black. Vein blood turns black. This side, you see how symmetrical this is? On this side is the same thing, only it's white. Down here you have a bump here and a bump here. Those are the tendons that run right over the top of your finger. That little peeled back area right there is grip skin. Grip skin is the tough skin on your fingers, your feet, your toes, and all that. And it peels back just like this. Now, everybody says, oh, that's just an artist, they just made a drawing. No, they didn't. That's incorrect. These are one of the most accurate drawings there are. These spin in space, giving you a ton of different angles and shadows. That's the key. This is absolutely flawlessly perfect. This is exactly identical to what a finger looks like. Who's going to draw that out in space and say, oh, there's a finger in space? They'd have to be an idiot to do that, just to have fun, to draw and make a joke out of it. This is exactly what this looks like, even where the flesh is torn, where the skin is torn, where the investments of the tendons are and all the anchors are. I understand this intimately, and so does the anatomist. If you get an anatomist biologist that says this isn't a finger, I'd like to speak to him. I'd like to find out what his credentials are to be able to make those statements. I've taught the top anatomists in the world, and they are not disagreeing. Nobody wants to be heard about it, but they do not disagree whatsoever. Okay, my friends, this is crazy, I know, absolutely, but if you read Velikovsky, he's talked about Venus being born from the feared god Jupiter. Now, you say, The feared god Jupiter. Well, that sounds like a male. Zeus is a male. Well, the way Ovid talks about this, they could change themselves into any sex they wanted, virtually anything. This is the great red spot. And this is on Jupiter. And it is on Jupiter right now. And guess what? It's starting to turn round instead of this. This, if you know anatomy, certainly represents the sexual body part of a female, a vagina. And that's what Velikovsky said, that every culture had it written in their ancient texts that a fiery comet was born, fiery comet, which was Venus, and it's still 950 degrees or something, was born. It's fiery, just like the sun, and it came out of Jupiter, spinning backwards. They're supposed to spin to the right, or everything's supposed to spin to the right. But Venus would spin to backwards because it was being ejected from a right spinner. That would mean it would spin left. I can show you this. It's very simple. It's just obvious, technical obviousness. Now, that took 7 days, apparently, to come towards the Earth and almost impact the Earth. That's what created the Great Flood. It boiled the waters. A lot of places boiled. Most of the oceans actually boiled, is what they said. That's the words that are in the text. And it killed all the giant creatures. And there was giant creatures. I mean giant, you can't even imagine, 1,000 miles long. All right? They had to be wiped out somehow. And Jupiter did it by ejecting a planet. Now, is this the plan now? Because I'm telling you right now, this baby's about to give birth. This, which I'm telling you is a vagina, is now turning round. They've been following it for the last few years. And which also the pattern of winds around it are shifting because it's puffing up. This, the top of the vagina, is called the Venus mound. Right up here on the top of the vagina. They knew about this. Who would call it the Venus mound? I mean, come on. See this? Look. Mound of Venus, a little known region. It's the key to having orgasms, is what they say. The mound of Venus. It's right on the top of the vaginal entry there. Anyway, the Venus mound, the pubic mound. Mons pubis, mound of Venus. Okay, these are from all different sources. This is NASA, and USA, and Secrets of the Universe, and they are showing the great red spot. And what are the changes? They're finding changes. It's changing. And I'm going to tell you, this is kind of scary. This is October 2021. Shape of Jupiter's red spot is changing. Here's why. Our solar system's most iconic storm is indubitably great. It is red and spot-like. Well, let's take a real close look at it because it's also biological. All right, don't forget, this is NASA Goddard Space, and they are showing this they're taking this from an orbiter somewhere out there. All right, here's what's going on the red spot, and Jupiter specifically. I drew in these little red spots. That is actually Jupiter's red spot. Now, Jupiter is spinning in the right-hand rule, just like all the planets are supposed to. Venus emerged from there, which would force it to spin backwards, roll out of there backwards. So it should be going this way. Well, it can't come out of there going in this direction. It's going to come out of there going backwards, and it did. And Venus is the only planet spinning backwards. Uranus has a little bit of a backward spin, but not like that. Now, what do we see here? If it's spinning this direction, which I can guarantee you it is, the most impact is going to be here, and there's going to be like 3 zones. They'll set up a separation zone of magnetism around them which will push the other fields away. Exactly like it does on the Sun, but Jupiter's not quite as intense as the Sun. Now, what do you notice? Let me just erase my little doodles here so that we can see what this picture looks like. All right, here we go. Don't forget, there's an impact zone here. You see how perfectly impacted it is here? And then down here, the same thing. And then here we have a serious impact zone. Well, what's going on with the red spot? That's not a storm. That is a mound. It's called the Venus mound. It's the Mons Pubis. Venus Mons Pubis. Because it is literally a vagina. And it is bumped up. It's not, this isn't causing a storm. You see what's going on there? Let me bring this thing in here so you can see real close. Okay, let's think about this, all right? Think carefully. Again, this is the impact zone. It's spinning like this, impacting like hell over here. This would just keep going straight across like the rest of it, except it's going around this and swirling. It's going around it and swirling. It's not, this isn't swirling it. It's going around that mound and swirling. The same thing here. It's coming around this part of the mound and swirling. There's nothing going on here, and there's nothing going on here other than biology. All I can tell you is what I'm seeing, and I'll show you. Then you make up your own mind. Don't just decide I'm insane. You know, you can come to that conclusion eventually. That's fine. But don't do it before you see the evidence. So let's see the evidence. Okay, I think I mentioned about Velikovsky's research that talked about Jupiter giving birth to Venus. This is the great red spot. And it's gone from that to like this. All right, this was 2019. It was a little elongated. And here's, you know, it's getting more and more round. Let me put it that way. Now, is that a sign of being, you know, pumping up the, having a baby sort of growing in there, or planet baby, or whatever you want to call it? Plaby? Whatever is growing in there, it appears to me to be pushing, getting ready to push, and creating more of a round instead of an elongated shape. Let me show you what it looked like, and here's what it looks like now. Or, well, that was a few years ago. Well, I guess that's 2019. All right, but just before this, and they've been following this for a few years now, and it's, well, this is 2019, but they've been following it for several years before that, and it's been changing right along. Now, normally, you see this right here? This is the great red spot, and that's us. And we are identical almost to the size of Venus. And that's what's got to come out of Venus. I'm sorry. It's got to come, well, we are identical to the size of Venus, but it's this, another planet possibly, has to come out of that same red spot if it's going to have another baby planet. All right, this is very, very strange, and this was all written about it. They said that the feared god Jupiter, which is this, gave birth to the fiery comet, which later became Venus, and it almost hit Earth, causing a catastrophe, and it actually did, apparently hit Mars, killed it. I showed you these bands. This is because it's smashing in. These are all the clouds rolling around it. It's not rolling. This isn't the storm. It's rolling around it that's showing it looks like a storm. It's because it's spinning into all of that space particles, which is light. Light is all made of particles. There's a lot that we have to start to rethink. A lot. Bonjour mes amis, bonjour, Roger once again, and a shocker du jour to start your day off here. Now, what is the shocker du jour today? Well, I think Jupiter might be ready to give birth again. out of the Great Red Spot. Hubble observes Jupiter's Great Red Spot changing. I'm going to tell you right now, that's a birth canal, and Venus was birthed from that Great Red Spot in 3,500 years ago, 1500 BC. Velikovsky did all the research on this. If you read what happened to the Earth was almost devastated by this event when that Great Red Spot gave birth to Venus spinning backwards, which it would. I'm going to explain all this shortly. And it almost hit Earth, causing a catastrophe, absolute total devastation to Earth. And then it just destroyed Mars. And then in another time it came back and almost hit Earth again, causing another catastrophe. And then it finally settled into a nice orbit like it should. But what if that happens again? Now, I'm going to go through a ramble about a whole bunch of stuff in biology and chemistry and how things are born. And then we're going to get into anatomy, because I'm going to tell you right now, that is a birth canal. And if you don't want to see one, you better not watch, because I'm going to show it to you right now, and then we're going to get into deep. I'm sorry, my friends, but this is the red spot. This isn't cloud swirling. This is tissue. This is the vagina, all right? And that right there is what I call a spurlock. I'm not kidding you. It's even on Venus. Look at this. Watch. You see this little attachment here? You see that strap coming up and that attachment? Wait a minute. I have my other spurlock around here somewhere. Hold on. Here it is. That's this attachment right here. And they all have that, where one tissue ties into another. Look at this. That right there is the identical same spurlock. You see it? Identical. And that's what locked this lung into somebody's body. This has been DNA tested and CAT scanned and everything else. See it? You see the strap coming down here? It's the same thing. There it is right there. That's it. And that is, I mean, it even looks like it has the hairs and everything. This is, I mean, it has every detail, every single detail, every detail. And they call this the Venus Mons, the Venus pubis mons, which means the mound of Venus, which is right up here, right up at the top. It's the fleshy mat that covers the top of the vagina, where it goes into the pelvis. They say it's the cushion for the pushing.